China is a rising power on the world stage. Once a fragmented rural backwater nation has now seen a massive resurgence after Deng Xiaoping's market socialist reforms, and in the modern day enjoys great economic success and contention for the leading economic nation of the world. However, the one thing withholding China from greatness is Taiwan. Taiwan is the last bastion of China untouched by the CCP, and has been a great pain in the Chinese rear ever since Chiang Kai-shek fled to the island in 1949. Now in the modern day, China looks longingly to the island, desiring to finally achieve the One China policy and unify the motherland. However, that goal is far unrealistic in the meantime. Taiwan has been under heavy Japanese and US protection, so now is not that time. For now, we must wait patiently for the right moment to strike, while we focus on other things. And that is not good. The sickness that once started out in the streets of Wuhan has now gone international, and we need to deal with it right now. The initial stages of dealing with the virus were stressful. COVID was spreading fast due to our enormous population, and we were practically feeding bodies to the virus to infect. Thanks to our great president Xi Jinping's leadership, we were able to contain and control the virus as we developed a vaccine. And while it did take a few months to finalize a true prevention method to infection, we were able to finally produce one and stamp out the virus. Unlike many other countries, we were able to cope quite well with the virus. Things certainly weren't perfect for us with the economy shouldering much of the backlash from COVID, but we were able to keep the people under control. Unlike Saudi Arabia, the virus was somehow able to reach the king and take his life, which eventually led into the nation being plunged into a brutal civil war, and in turn causing a massive international oil crisis, as the main source of the precious resource was now embroiled in war with itself, and we now had to both acclimate to the oil crisis and rehabilitate the dented economy. Meanwhile, the USA was not coping well with the many issues in the world. The combination of COVID, the oil crash, and the controversial 2020 presidential election would culminate in the collapse of our greatest rival. This both had its upsides and downsides. Most notably, in the short term, our economy had taken another massive hit. While politically the US and China were certainly not allies, they were very close trade partners, and with the US gone, much of China's export income was now gone as well. But this was only a temporary problem, for the window of opportunity to finally reclaim Taiwan has finally been opened. However, before we can do so, we need to finalize our fixes to the Chinese political and economic situation post-COVID, but that did not take long. And a few months later, we had begun the steps to reclaim Taiwan. Taiwan, however, was not alone. They had joined the Pacific Defense Treaty Organization with Japan and Australia, with the latter nations being fully committed to the defense of Taiwan. However, they were not an issue to us, for the time was now. We seized smaller neighboring islands around the nation, blockaded them, conducted military exercises, everything until we had finally deemed ourselves ready to officially realize the One China policy. The war had now begun, and while we had believed this to be an easy victory, we quickly found that we were not prepared. The PDTO's navy had arrived in full force and made it impossible for a landing in Taiwan to be feasible. And to combine to the stalemate, the public were very opposed to the war. Students would organize massive protests across the nation opposed to Xi's presidency, with this eventually culminating in a revolt in Hong Kong. The revolt was of course swiftly crushed, but the message was clear. And very little time later, with the protests becoming more and more serious and our military's incapability to actually contest Taiwan, we were forced into signing peace with the PDTO. The post-war situation was not good for China, to say the least. We had lost to the weak, feeble Taiwan that we had set out to liberate for so long, and the public was not happy with our humiliation. Xinjiang had quickly splintered off from the nation, and Tibet had been plunged into chaos. Xi knew that he needed to try and fix the rapidly deteriorating situation ASAP, and he would try. But there was one factor that he had not acknowledged: the military. Zhang Yuzhia, the lead military commander in China, would lead a coup against Xi, ousting him from office and taking full control. The military now has full control over China, and Zhang was certainly no political man. He was already in his old age, and the public did partially blame him for the failure in Taiwan. He knew that he had to hand over administration to a different, more capable figure. The only question was, would he hand control back to the bureaucrats and party leaders, or would he allow for figures in the military to take control? Zhang didn't have much time to decide, but looking back to Taiwan and how the party had failed China, Zhang knew that he could only entrust the safeguarding of China to his militarist allies, and so he would pass leadership to the revanchist militarists. However, the revanchists themselves had three main contenders for Zhang's successor: Li Zuosheng, the chief of staff of the PLA, Chen Wenqing, the current secretary for political and legal affairs, and Chen Quanguo, the former secretary for Xinjiang province. All three were very powerful men, but Zhang's choice was clear. Chen Quanguo, the former secretary of Xinjiang, would be chosen as Zhang's successor. He had already proven his capability in Xinjiang through the suppression of the many peoples who were opposed to Xi's previous regime,
and to add to that, he had greatly improved the local economies in the regions. His popularity and capability made him the only real option for Zhang, and so Chen Quanguo would be sworn into office, and he would quickly begin implementing his reforms. During all of this, our forces in Xinjiang were also able to destroy the many Islamist rebel groups in the region, with the local administration then later being reintegrated into the state. However, we still needed to deal with the insurgents in Tibet, but their time would come eventually. Shifting back to the situation at hand, Chen knew that the people were angry. Our humiliation had enraged everyone, from the far leftists who blamed the elites for our failure, to the nationalists who had only become more enraged with our defeat. The people were mad. The protests across the nation called for a national revival, a purge against the corrupt bureaucracy, a renewal of Chinese society, and most importantly, revenge against the PDTO imperialists. The protests were everywhere, but the focal point was in Beijing. The people had stormed Tiananmen Square and had begun camping out in the square, all in an effort to reach the ears and eyes of Chen. And to their surprise, they did. Chen would shortly announce to the nation his support of the protesters, and he endorsed the concept of unifying the nation under a, quote, revolutionary front to redefine the future of China. And with the protesters surprised but pleased, they would slowly disperse, and stability would slowly return to China. Chen's first move would be the recognition of an integration of the national militia. They were the ones who organized the protests, and their devotion to their beliefs certainly did not go unnoticed by Chen. However, the organization was very polarized, with one side aligning with the leftist concepts of class struggle and collectivism, and the other aligning to the right, believing in ethnic pride, expansionism, and the expulsion of anything deemed, quote, unorthodox. Chen had to choose between these two splinter factions, but to him the choice was clear. Chen would quietly align himself with the rightist Chinese Confucianists and vowed to take steps towards empowering them. Meanwhile, Chen had officially created the Revolutionary Front in an effort to unify the political scene, and he would do this through the creation of an integration of other political parties into the main party's coalition. And so, with the political sphere now stabilized, Chen could begin his societal reforms. Chen would begin reintroducing the Confucian values back into the nation, mainly through the education of the future generations. The youth would now be taught of traditional values, righteousness, integrity, and honor to help uphold the new state. Meanwhile, a war had broken out between Pakistan and India over a massive skirmish in Kashmir. While we weren't direct allies with Pakistan, we did still aid them against our sworn enemies, the Indians. Our divisions upon arrival would immediately begin performing well. We made a small pocket around Jaisalmer, and after destroying it, we had spearheaded an offensive towards Delhi. The push was slow, but we would eventually find ourselves right outside of the city. However, it was too hard to directly push in and take it, so we took a small detour south, before then pushing up to the Nepalese border to cut off Delhi. But before we could do so, the Indians would surrender to the Pakistanis, resulting in an advancement of the border. During our intervention in India, we had continued our many reforms. Most notably, we had begun dealing with religion through siding with smaller local religions in order to eventually destroy Islam and Christianity in the nation, along with us conducting a small purge in the bureaucracy. While the purge didn't receive much backlash, our new religious policy certainly did. Many people were now sparking unrest in the sects of southern China, central China, and of course Xinjiang. But we could deal with these dissenters through military supervision in the regions. But it would take time to stem this resistance, and so for now we were simply playing the waiting game. And so we finally took some time to now help out the Chinese economy. We primarily focused on reversing many of the market socialist changes made by Deng and Xi, focusing on a more state-syndicalist model, prioritizing the workers and people over corporations. Though this will hurt our economy in the short term, our people will be far better off, and the economy as a whole will become more resilient to future potential economic problems. Over in America, the once fragmented and broken nation had been unified as well. Trump was able to salvage the situation and take down all other groups. Simultaneously in Europe, things were beginning to heat up. After Putin had died to COVID in 2021, the fascist LDPR under Vladimir Zhirinovsky had taken over and recently recognized the Donbass republics and invaded Ukraine, which had led to a NATO intervention, and now Europe is embroiled in total war once again. Back in the homeland, we were beginning to finalize our reforms with the resisting groups in southern and central China finally being suppressed and integrated. The next step, however, was the expulsion of all foreigners. We blamed them for our failure, and only through fear and violence would we finally expel the last of the foreigners. And now with many of them gone, we could finally smash Islam and put an end to the resisting groups in Xinjiang. With Xinjiang now quelled once again, we had turned to the military. Our command structure has been in total disarray ever since our failure against the PDTO. We can at least utilize the war as a learning experience to know what to do right from now on. Our main reforms consisted around a greater focus on tanks, well-trained divisions, and an organized offensive over our old, messy doctrine of human waves. Most importantly, we began improving our division's templates, and this great shift, although expensive, seems to be very promising. Now, with the economy for the most part reformed and the military bettered to a degree, Chen had declared that China was once again ready to look out and establish themselves in Asia. Ever since the end of the Taiwan War, Japan, Australia, and Taiwan had taken advantage of our absence to expand their faction in preparation for our return. At this current moment, they were able to get India, all of Southeast Asia with the exception of Burma and Vietnam, and much of Oceania to join them as well, leaving our options very limited. But rather than focusing on the south first, Chen had decided to look at invading and reintegrating Mongolia into China. The invasion of Mongolia was a quick but messy affair. The lacking infrastructure made supplying our troops difficult to say the least, but despite this, the Mongolians were not capable of resisting to any capacity, and so they fell and were directly annexed into China. At this point, we had also established our rival faction to the PDTO, the East Asian Defense Initiative, or the EADI. With Mongolia now gone, we then looked to Pakistan. Though we did help out Pakistan in defeating the Indians, they were occupying our rightful land in Kashmir, and seeing an easy target, we had invaded. The narrow front in Kashmir did slow us down a little bit, but we greenlit multiple paratrooper operations on many of the major Pakistani cities, causing much chaos behind the front and preventing the Pakistanis from mounting a proper defense in time. And so shortly after Islamabad was captured, Pakistan would surrender, and we would annex the entirety of Kashmir and puppet the rest of Pakistan, officially adding our first member to the faction. From there, we then reached out to Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bhutan, who all still remained independent. Nepal and Sri Lanka would accept and join the EADI, but Bhutan on the other hand had refused, and so we began drafting up invasion plans to take down the nation. But not long later, the invasion of Bhutan had been undergone, resulting in their quick collapse and joining of the ADI. From there, we finally looked to Southeast Asia. While Vietnam had joined the PDTO, Myanmar was still engrossed in a massive civil war, and seeing a prime opportunity, Chen had declared for a special military operation to take place in the nation to return stability to the region. The warlords' inferior militaries were not able to hold us back, and so we finally ended the civil war in Myanmar and added another nation to our faction. A mere month or so later, we had officially finished our societal reforms. The Confucian nationalist ideas have now been fully implemented into society, and now the time to officially overhaul the nation had come to be. Now, we shall no longer be known as the People's Republic of China, for we have ascended that and become the People's Heavenly Republic. We are now the light of the world, a thriving civilization that needs only to take its revenge against those who wronged it, the Japanese. However, we are still not ready yet. While our economic reforms have also been finalized, the military still is not ready. We need to continue our reforms and expansion of it, as well as preparing our allies for the upcoming conflict, most notably North Korea. North Korea has always been reliant on us, desiring to fully unify the peninsula, and the time for unification is edging closer and closer every day, so it is only appropriate for us to help out our future ally in Korea. Meanwhile in Russia, Dugin had taken power after the Russian lost to NATO in the First European War. He had now subjugated all of Central Asia and was ramping up for the second invasion of Europe. First came the revolutions across the former Russian territories under NATO's jurisdiction, and Dugin, seeing this as the prime justification, would then use this as an excuse to invade NATO under the guise of protecting the Russian minorities in the regions. And so, the Eurasian-European War had begun. The fire has now found itself in Europe once again, but we cannot bring such a thing to the Japanese yet, for we still needed to bide our time and wait for the right moment. The nation is ready, the economy is reformed and prepared for the coming conflict, the military has been sufficiently reformed and expanded, and most importantly, the people are ready to finally take their revenge against the Japanese. And so on December 13th, 2030, Chen Quanguo would officially announce to the nation that now was the time. Now was the time to finally take revenge against the Japanese dogs for our once horrifying humiliation. And so now the Great Asian War has begun. And a little time later, with North Korea having now officially joined the EADI, we had now begun our march down to Busan. The South Koreans were woefully underprepared for this, and we were able to advance fast, quickly taking Seoul and pushing down to the Sea of Japan. PDTO reinforcements would arrive in Korea though,
but they were unable to reinforce the front in time, and were now trapped in Busan and the surrounding area. And so the siege of Busan has begun. Meanwhile, our offensive in East Bengal has been a resounding success. We have shortened the Indian front greatly, but we still do not have any time to breathe, as to counteract this, the Indians have invaded Bangladesh to widen the front. Thankfully, Bangladesh was able to slow the Indians down, though, despite their small size. So we could organize our divisions along the border in preparation for when the nation eventually capitulates. Back in Korea, and the siege is going quite well. Though slow, we are pushing the PDTO back. It's only a matter of time until we seize the city and eradicate the troops stationed in it. But the PDTO are determined to not let this happen. They are launching constant naval invasions to try and land behind us in Korea, or even along the coast in the mainland. Looking back at Busan once again, we had finally pushed the PDTO all the way back to the city center. All we needed to do now was slowly grind down the divisions in the city until they were either dead or captured. Back in Bengal, Bangladesh had unfortunately capitulated, but our divisions were ready to hold the area. And sometime after, Busan had finally been captured and the PDTO were now 440,000 men short. With Korea finally mopped up, we can properly look to India as well as Xinjiang, where they had made a minor breakthrough. Now, the Indians were able to create a couple of minor revolts in Xinjiang and Tibet upon them taking down our Pakistani puppet, but when our divisions arrived, we were able to put down the revolts and push the Indians back from Xinjiang. The plan for India was to launch a massive push through Bangladesh to tie down as many divisions in the area, whilst we simultaneously pushed down from Nepal to the Sea of Bengal to encircle the divisions in Bangladesh. Progress was stubbornly slow. The jungles and mountains combined with the excess number of PDTO divisions in the area was slowing us down greatly, but that didn't make our push impossible. From Bhutan, Bengal, and Nepal, we were able to push and cut off a large divisions in Sikkim. This was already an incredible catch, but we could not stop here. We needed to keep on pushing, and we would. As I said, progress was incredibly slow, but we would eventually find an opening in Bangladesh and push down to cut off Dhaka, trapping many more divisions. Fighting in the area was fierce. The sheer amount of divisions trapped here combined with the terrain slowed us down greatly, but through the usage of our gas attacks and patience, we slowly pushed the divisions into smaller and smaller pockets. Eventually, after much time, we had finally destroyed the pocket and taken Dhaka. Total casualties in the pocket are unsure, but we can confirm that there were upwards of 500,000 people killed or captured. Though there were still many divisions remaining in India, pushing had now become far easier due to the fact that we were now finally past the rough terrain, and so the end of India had begun. And now with the Indian subcontinent dealt with and 6 million PDTO men now dead, we can turn elsewhere. We now have 3 options for our next offensive. We can either focus on Indochina, we could attempt an invasion of Taiwan, or we can go straight into the lion's den, Japan. While all 3 had their benefits, we had decided that the time to take down our sworn enemy was now. The end of Japan has come. Our first steps to eradicate the Japanese menace was to utilize some of our nuclear stockpile on them. Many may condemn us for this, but in this case it is justified. Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka were then engulfed in a bright flash of light, for 3 nuclear bombs have been dropped on Japan, and with their defenses weakened and their nation in shock, we launched our invasion.
With our sworn enemy now destroyed, we shall enact our great revenge upon their people. We will never allow Japan to be a threat to us ever again, and the only way to do that is through total annihilation. We shall show no remorse like how they did to us in Nanjing. The end of Japan is here. With the last capable remaining member of the PDTO now eradicated, the rest of the faction could not last. We first of all enacted Operation Southern Fury, and all of the Indo-Chinese nations fell with ease. During this, we had also launched our invasion of Taiwan. We shall fulfill the One China policy. No longer will we allow for this stain on our nation to exist, for it shall rejoin the one true China. No corner of Asia shall be left untouched from our great vengeance, for the entire continent shall feel our wrath. And with the capitulation of New Zealand, the last of the PDTO has finally fallen, and we can declare total victory in the Great Asian War. With victory now established, our main goal to eradicate the Japanese has finally been completed. But there are still some loose ends to clear up. First of all, India. We quickly crossed into the fractured mess that was once the nation, and it did not take long for us to unify the rest of the subcontinent under our administration. From there, an administration change to the rest of Asia was fit to be enacted. The only solution to prevent any further threats to China is the eradication of those threats.
Finally, we have fully avenged ourselves and enacted the only punishment fit for such monsters: total subjugation. For a new order has come to Asia, a Chinese one. And with that, Chen's glorious revenge against the Japanese and the PDTO has come to an end. I hope you all enjoyed the video. It took quite a while to finish, but I am very proud of it. Anyways, I hope you all have a good one. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all around. Anyways, guys, have a good one. And would you look at that, Dugan won in Europe as well.